Shedeur Sanders didn't wait for a video crew or another opportunity just days after he was cut. He rotated the lens. First, a multi-episode documentary series was released as infrastructure rather than damage control. This was not an act of vanity. It was reclamation of narrative. Complete editorial authority, ownership of intellectual property, and planned publication. Real-time authorship taken by an athlete. It was an aftershock for Browns. For the NFL, it served as a warning. Go ahead and subscribe if you're interested in the true tale and all the messy turns that aren't shown on highlight reels. Additionally, you should certainly subscribe if you plan to stay to watch how this Browns quarterback crisis unfolds. His distribution was Sanders' rejection. The media apparatus established by the league to provide visibility had been rendered superfluous. There was no pivot here. The idea that value must be deduced from above was carefully dismantled. Sanders recreated the entire idea of athlete influence on his own terms after breaking the league's monopoly on platform, legitimacy, and narrative. In reality, sovereignty is what appears to be independence. Every aspect of his business, from the grant matching pipeline for disadvantaged schools to a quarterback technology verified by the Hall of Fame, demonstrates that significance today depends on execution rather than endorsement. The Browns did not lose a player in this instance. The league was losing its script because of this. The Browns believed that they were in charge of a roster. In reality, they set off a movement. Shedeur Sanders went from being an insignificant quarterback to a completely independent brand operator in just 48 hours, launching a $14 million infrastructure that was constructed completely outside of the league's purview. There were no calls to the front office, no cooperation with the players' union, no ESPN special. Just a quick and comprehensive independent execution that caught the league off guard. This was not a resurgence. It was a detour. Additionally, Shedeur completely changed the course of events, whereas most front offices would be examining a player's tape. He didn't seek approval from the league. He demonstrated how insignificant it was. He had complete control over how his tale was conveyed because his launch included a multi-episode documentary series with no league monitoring. Storytelling as leverage and intellectual property are more important than merely image. Additionally, he removed the NFL from a narrative they believed they controlled by doing it his way. This wasn't satisfied. It was responsibility. Just a direct line of communication between the athlete and the public that Shedeur owns, distributes, and makes money from, no edits, spin, or filtered press releases. And it was only the first move. What attracted the most attention was the kids' football program. This wasn't a once-a-year visit at a camp or a picture opportunity in a gym. It is a standalone, expandable training system for marginalized groups. Entirely self-funded and devoid of any NFL logos. This isn't PR outreach. It's deliberate development. A clear challenge to the NFL's conventionally superficial approach to developing local talent. He didn't copy their setup. He constructed a superior one. One that doesn't require a player to ever touch an NFL pipeline, but instead trains, inspires, and maintains. He didn't stop there, either. In order to help high school and collegiate athletic departments that have been neglected, underfunded, and left on their own, he established a grant-matching foundation. Sponsors and public relations departments do not screen the funds. It's private financing with no corporate ties and direct liquidity. The kind of funding that sustains initiatives, levels the playing field, and appends the established sponsorship structures on which the NFL has depended for many years. This was not a gift. It came down like a warning shot and was redistribution. The wearable quarterback analytics platform followed. Furthermore, this isn't one of those hype-driven influencer tools. The Hall of Fame-level names of NFL luminaries co-signed this tech. It gained instant legitimacy from that validation, which also established it as a legitimate investment in performance science rather than a gimmick. It allows players to access their own data without league intervention, spans generations, and demonstrates that athlete-led innovation can rival or surpass corporate tech laboratories. That's autonomy, not simply growth. The most astounding aspect is that none of this required institutional cosigns, league checkmarks, or NFL approval. Without ever wearing a uniform for another team, he constructed the ecosystem, connected the parts, and launched. Shedeur demonstrated that he didn't require another chance, whereas other athletes wait months for one. Compared to most active starts, he made his own relevance, and it spread louder, faster, and farther. As a result, the The NFL is suddenly facing an unexpected challenge. What happens if a player isn't interested in the league? Because Shedeur's value was not the only thing at stake here. It was intended to demonstrate that value can be created rather than bestowed. That you don't need a franchise to characterize you if you're proficient in digital infrastructure, attention economies, and strategic vision. You can create your own organization while simultaneously making the league appear antiquated. The Browns took the worst of it. They lost more than one player. They were discovered to be staring in the wrong way. A missing scouting detail did not generate flaws in their evaluating method. Because it made use of an outdated framework, it had flaws. Shedeur was viewed as a backup quarterback with undeveloped mechanics. They didn't consider him a valuable architect of the 21st century. The tape was measured. Culture was shifted by him. The actual disparity is that NFL teams continue to operate in a linear development era where value is determined by metrics, draft position, and institutional visibility. However, that world is no longer in existence. Not for Shedeur's kind of athlete. He did more than simply surpass their expectations. He gave the impression that their entire system was unable to keep up. There are multiple teams involved. It is the complete model. Shedeur revealed the extent to which the league relies on players adhering to the rules. Go through the steps, sign the agreement, do your share, and allow the system to tell your tale. However, he demonstrated that the league has nothing left to hold over you once you break free and execute it well. Franchises can no longer guarantee visibility. It is a claim that athletes can make. Shedeur also didn't merely assert it. He climbed up. He turned it up. He turned it into a whole ecosystem and armed it. He created what most franchises couldn't in a year in 48 hours, including the youth program, the finance pipeline, the tech platform, and the documentary series. And he worked alone. This was not rebellion. This was accountability. An impact-driven, values-first model that doesn't demand attention. It demands it. And the league has two options when something is constructed that firmly, quickly, and intentionally change or be overtaken. Since athletes are observing, prospective college students are witnessing what true agency looks like. Not merchandise drops, not brand deals, complete independence. In addition to agents and trainers, they are also entering the game with media plans, equity requests, and IP talks already underway, and they are no longer requesting permission. Additionally, brands are changing. Because Shedeur's authenticity was genuine, it surpassed celebrity endorsements and glossy advertising. It was structure, not optics. Now, that's what sponsors desire. Access to meaning rather than a league. And Shedeur did so without ever requiring a changing room. The Browns' decision, which was supposed to be business as usual, turned into a test of how well NFL teams comprehend the times they live in. They saw a roster cut as they turned to face Shedeur. They failed to recognize a turning point in culture. A reminder that the athletes of the future are more than merely gifted. They have a plan. They have a plan, leverage, and infrastructure. And waiting for a jersey is no longer part of that plan. It wasn't Shedeur Sanders' noise that caused this to have such a profound effect on the league. He had an influence even without their platform. For a system that relies solely on visibility, gatekeeping, and the appearance of scarcity. That is harmful in addition to being disruptive. Because everyone who is watching from the sidelines, including wave players, draft hopefuls, and young athletes, now knows the reality. To matter, you don't need to be selected. Being in charge doesn't need being on a roster. Without ever setting foot on the field, you may create your own environment, tell your own tale, and become a force for good. The NFL is aware of this. It was the Browns in particular who were slapped with the revelation initially. They believed they were making a smart choice on depth chart chess and roster management. However, they actually sparked one of the most significant paradigm revolutions in contemporary sports. They revealed the flaw in their own reasoning by underestimating Shedeur, by viewing him through an antiquated prism. It wasn't only that they misjudged his skill. They were misinterpreting the time period. Talent evaluation no longer starts and stops with scouting reports and statistics. The NFL is no longer like that, where guys play the game and stay in their lane. These days, what counts is how an athlete navigates culture, develops across verticals, and takes ownership of their name, image, and legacy in real time. Shedeur contributed that to the discussion. Infrastructure is equally as important as performance. That is how a prototype differs from a possibility. Someone who wasn't merely trying to play the game was let go by the Browns. He was creating a brand new one. Additionally, the team does not hold the authority in that new game. The player lives with it. This is why a roster change isn't the focus at this time. It has to do with a change in reality. Shedeur introduced a self-contained vertically integrated system instead of a brand. Media, technology, philanthropy, and development are all in sync, owned, and functioning. Nothing was borrowed, and nothing was reliant on established institutions. That's the current blueprint. Additionally, it can be executed without MVP votes, Pro Bowl participation, or draft status. All that is needed is vision and execution. Shedeur also provided both quickly. His series of documentaries. That posed a threat on its own. Because of what it stands for, not because of what it says about the Browns. No NFL film editing room, no team filtering, no network gatekeepers, complete narrative control. It's Shedeur's ownership, his voice, and his framing. And that directly challenges the leadership in a league that is accustomed to overseeing every plot. Now, the league does not own the content that creates a player's image. It is self-made. It isn't branding. That's the asset class. Change. Shedeur isn't merely narrating his tale. It's being transformed into cultural equity by him. Additionally, the league cannot access that IP once it is in the world. The same is true of his youth football program. For many years, the NFL has been at the top of a strict, organized pipeline. Draft days are combined with college athletics. All of this is a part of a system that says it can find talent. Shedeur's initiative, however, reverses that. He is not employed by the pipeline. He is creating a brand new one from the ground up that is community-based, autonomous, and scalable. And the entire structure is at risk because of that. Because the NFL loses control when athletes begin creating development systems outside of it. Particularly in the historically marginalized communities, those systems quickly acquire credibility when they are purpose-driven and values-driven. Outreach isn't that. Planning for succession is that. The league ought to do that, but Shedeur is already doing it, and he's doing it more effectively. Just results. No theatrical campaigns. No red tape. Then there is the foundation, which matches grants and directs funds to initiatives that are underfunded. Money where it's needed, without the need for an intermediary or approval from someone at corporate headquarters. Now, this goes beyond simply avoiding the league's charitable concept. It reveals it. Because Shedeur is effectively and directly reallocating resources, whereas the NFL has ribbon cuttings and fancy press releases. Additionally, it operates swiftly, silently, and in a manner that elevates institutional generosity to the level of theater. It's not a metaphor. It's structural. And that's where the ruling class finds things awkward. Because it is evident that this is not a comeback arc when you take a step back and consider everything. The financial redistribution, the youth development program, the tech platform, and the Dories. This is a plan for replacement. Shedeur didn't simply quit the NFL. He created a substitute for it. And it was unexpected by the league. They were too preoccupied with playbook mastery, throwing mechanics, sideline poise, and outdated analytics to measure him on tape. Cultural fluency was not measured by them. Off the field, they didn't look for leadership. They disregarded factors like ecosystem, design, audience velocity, and digital-first narrative architecture. So he was out here creating his own while they were busy hooking him into old models. No approvals, no gatekeepers, no waiting. The league is now left wondering what will happen if additional players take that route. In actuality, Shedeur's model can be replicated. Superstardom is not necessary. It is based on thinking, execution, and access. And the floodgates open the instant other athletes discover that they too can get around the system, control their platform, and make money off of their true worth. Despite its size and history, the NFL is powerless to stop that. No more. This incident demonstrated that athlete compliance is uncommon. It's a habitual legacy. Especially when athletes enter the game already media-savvy, equity-literate, and mission-driven, habit is a poor basis for power. The league isn't in danger of disintegrating. Its monopoly is being undermined. Shedeur just demonstrated that the new power is independent, decentralized, and held by athletes. How does it proceed from here? More players will begin negotiating documentary writers in addition to contracts. In addition to agents, more prospects will be included in the draft with tech portfolios, production teams, and foundation designs. The NFL will have to change, not because it wants to, but because it has to. Because if they don't, the very individuals they formerly thought were interchangeable will take cultural control away from them. And Shedeur Sanders is the focal point because of this. Because to what he created rather than what he lost. An infrastructure that is fully operational, values-aligned, and runs without institutional approval. The system was not rejected by him. He outgrown it. And now there's a new perspective for everyone else. Fans, players, coaches, and general managers have all witnessed what happens when an athlete exercises full agency. The ramifications of what Shedeur Sanders just accomplished are real when they stop asking and begin designing. They are already evident and changing the way that players, management, and the media discuss legacy, control, and value in sports. The Browns didn't just cut a quarterback, let's face it. They released the first unmistakable proof that the system is no longer necessary. Not for fame, not for financial gain, not even for cultural significance. And that knowledge hits hard if you're currently playing in the NFL. Fearing free will is one thing. Fearing irrelevance is another matter. However, when a single-wave player surpasses entire enterprises in terms of cultural dominance, commercial effectiveness, and strategic acumen, it's more than just a warning. A fire alarm is that. Shedeur brought the future into the here and now. This was no coincidence. It wasn't an act. Above all, it wasn't about proving anyone incorrect. That's the cliched redemption story, the hill show them cliché, and the old narrative. All of that was omitted by Shedeur. He wasn't trying to impress the NFL with this. The goal was to demonstrate that the NFL is no longer the focal point. Since Shedeur didn't function from rejection, that is the aspect that most frightens them. He was ready to go. One thing is clear from the fact that his business was founded right after the disaster hit. He was psychologically, logistically, and tactically ready. He had more than one contingency plan. His was superior. One that operated independently of the media apparatus, the league, and any other legacy infrastructure. The NFL's traditionalists are still unable to comprehend that level of foresight. Furthermore, Shedeur is functioning on an entirely different axis than the league, which is based on metrics and compliance, rapidity, autonomy, and execution. He's not responding to what's happening. He is bringing about change. That is the distinction between being a part of the system and not. Examining it for what it is, slow, outdated, and limiting. And this is when the true change begins. Because the athletes of tomorrow aren't only observing. They're gaining knowledge. Every late-round pick, college star, and prospect is realizing that waiting your turn is no longer an option. It's about taking control of your story, investing in your own platform, and developing your turn before others try to take advantage of it. The signal is Shedeur's model. It claims that you can be seen without the league. The draft is not necessary to be valued. The team is not necessary for you to be relevant. And it's effective. This is the reason this moment is so irrevocable. The playbook has evolved, and not subtly or gradually. The old order was completely blown up in this situation. A thorough re-evaluation of the sources of value. And who is in charge of defining it? Because this is the truth. Shedeur created a business that is independent of the NFL. However, the NFL may now require him. Consider that reversal, that change in power. Shedeur now has a successful athlete sovereignty design that has been documented, and it is not a theoretical model. It is fully operational, makes money, has a social influence, and dominates the media. In contrast, the league is still trying to figure out what happened. This is the first time they've had to bargain with players. Players who have an existing following, a mission that is ongoing, a working business ecosystem, and evidence that they are important even when they are not on the field. Every general manager, coach, brand sponsor, and league partner is under pressure because of that. Because assessing a player's performance is no longer the only factor in signing them. It's not the other way around. It's about demonstrating your worthiness to be on their platform, respecting ownership, and connecting with their mission. And that flips the entire hierarchy around. In the past, the NFL was the pinnacle, the objective, and the only game that counted. However, Shedeur merely demonstrated that the game is portable and that it is possible to engineer its effect, economics, and cultural impact outside of the computer. And once that notion spreads, it is impossible to stop. This is why this moment is important. It's not about a single man accomplishing something noteworthy. It's about making a whole model visible. And it's feasible once it's apparent. And that becomes the norm once it's feasible. Shedeur constructed the door rather than merely breaking through. And that door is open now. What then takes place? It will be necessary for colleges to provide more than just playing time. They must provide brand congruence, ownership structures, and intellectual property freedom. Agents must develop into business architects rather than only negotiators. Scouts will have to broaden their concept of value to encompass purpose clarity, infrastructure maturity, and digital engagement. Because the players are no longer requesting a seat at the table, teams will need to change or risk becoming obsolete. Theirs is being built faster, better, and bigger. It's not limited to the NFL, either. All professional sports should take note of this. The athletes are tired of waiting for systems to change, so they must adjust or move aside. The system is becoming them. They are creating the platforms, managing the dialogues, and constructing the frameworks. Furthermore, Shedeur is not an anomaly. The first wave is him. This is what gives it its power. He didn't simply leave politely. He made a calculated escape. He completely reframed the idea of what it means to be dropped in the process. Since Shedeur wasn't dropped, let's face it. In every sense of the word, he was set free. Released from the restrictions imposed by a league that was only interested in its own playbook. Freed from a system that confused potential with conformity. He is now demonstrating that ownership, not touchdowns, contracts, or press conferences, is what makes a career. Control over your influence, platform, story, and future. The league will have to follow new regulations once that becomes the norm. The outdated gatekeeping techniques are ineffective. Because audience loyalty, capital, and visibility can all be developed separately, the exclusivity complex is dead. Institutions are no longer able to set the terms. That is the change, and it won't go away. You're correct if you're thinking, as you see this play out, this isn't just a player's response. It's a movement. This is the pivotal moment, the line that shows the before and after, when player power became operational rather than aspirational. Such as whether you're prepared for this next phase. You'll want a front row ticket because the system isn't just changing, it's being rewritten in real time right now. If you think additional players are about to make their move, leave a comment and subscribe.